Hey everyone, welcome back to my astrology channel. Today we're going to talk about Mars in your fifth house. All right, to understand that, let's first talk about what is Mars. Okay, so what is Mars? Mars is, you can take Mars as a commander of the universe. So if Sun is the king and Moon is the queen, then Mars is a commander of the universe. So Mars is raw action, it's a warrior. Mars is going to go and get that action done, get that job done via the action. Okay, it doesn't think about the consequences. It just likes to get the job done. So, Mars is also courage. Mars is aggression. So, if you have Mars sitting in the first house, that person may be very aggressive. We're going to talk about more qualities of that, but I wanted you to understand what Mars is. All right, so it's a warrior, it's a commander, it's aggressive. It can get temperamental very easily. By it, the native who has this placement can get aggressive very easily, can get angered very easily. Then they don't know what they're doing with their actions when they get angry. Because commander's job, the warrior's job, is basically to go out there and do the war. They don't think who is getting killed, who's getting hurt, whose emotions are at line. So that's kind of like your Mars. Okay. And now let's talk about the three different aspects of Mars. Okay. To understand how and what Mars does on the house, we want to understand Mars and then the aspects. So Mars has three different aspects. First aspect is going to be on the fourth house from where Mars sits. The second aspect is going to be on the seventh house from where Mars sits. And the third aspect is going to be on the eighth house from where Mars sits. Why does Mars have the fourth aspect? Mars, because it's a warrior, and the fourth house in the Kalpurush Kundali is of the house of the home and the mother. So your homeland, your motherland. It's a house of happiness. So warriors are supposed to protect your homeland, your motherland. So Mars has that special aspect that no other planet has, the fourth aspect, to protect its motherland from where it's sitting. The second aspect is on the seventh house from where it's sitting. Every planet has a seventh aspect, and as I always say, it's kind of like give and take. You give and you get. So Mars by nature is a malefic. It's a natural malefic. So if you give that house malefic, you're going to get back malefic many folds. Just like I mentioned in my Jupiter videos, the seventh aspect, if you give it love, you get back love many folds. So that's kind of the seventh aspect because it's a straight up 100% aspect on it, drishti, because it's the house is right in front of you. You can't miss it. You're going to look at it. So the next aspect is the eighth house. Why do we have the eighth aspect? Why does Mars have it? Well, in the Kalpurush Kundali, Mars rules the first and the eighth house. So Mars has a special aspect of watching over his own house. Okay, so eighth house is Scorpio, but whatever sign it's placed, it doesn't matter when Mars is aspecting it because that's going to be the eighth aspect. No other planet has the eighth aspect. So Mars has the fourth and that eighth aspect separate from all the other planets. Jupiter has the 5, 7, 9. Mars has the 4, 7, and 8. Now the eighth aspect, what does Mars do over there? So eighth is his own house. What do you do when you look at your own house? You're going to try to kill off the enemies of that house. So for instance, let's say that eighth aspect ends up being on the fourth house. Now the fourth house is the house of happiness, as I just mentioned. Now Mars is going to want to kill the enemies of the happiness for that native. So that's good. It may seem not good while it's happening, but at the end of the day, that's what Mars' goal is. So now that you understood what Mars is, what are the aspects, let's go into what Mars does when it sits in your houses. So let's talk about Mars in your fifth house. So when you have Mars in your fifth house, what is house number 5? House 5 is your children. It's your fame, your status, your self-expression. It's your love, romance. You can see those from here. You can also see your past life good deeds from house number 5. House number 5 is also the area above your belly button in your body. So those are the things you see from house 5. Because house 5 is originally ruled by the sun, sun is a lord, you also can see your government work, government services. You can see your royalty status, etc. In the past, that was royalty, right? Sun is king. But these days, royalty is more like the government. So you can see your government jobs and things of that nature as well. Or your lineage, if you're coming from a royal lineage, etc. If you have sun in house 5, you can kind of think about those terms as well, depending on where the dispositor and stuff is sitting. Now here, we're going to talk about Mars in house 5. Now, when you have Mars in house 5, as I mentioned, your children may have aggression. Your children may be aggressive towards you. The way you talk to them could be aggressive. The way they talk to you could be aggressive as well. Your romances, your love, those kind of relationship may also carry more of an aggressive tone to them as well. So those are the things you might want to watch out for. Your past life good deeds, perhaps you were in a situation. Now, again, that will depend on the lord of the 5th house. So for instance, if the lord of the 5th house, say, is sitting in it's Gemini, let's just say it's Gemini, which is number 3. If you have that as a dispositor, your Mars sitting there is going to bring karmas from the past life dealing with siblings, because house 3 is younger siblings. So you're going to see that and then connect it with house 5, which is going to be your children. So there's going to be some connections. If you have Mars and Gemini sitting in your house 5, you'll see some connection there with your younger siblings and also your children. Okay, so that's kind of one way to put it together. There's so many more factors that go into it: conjunctions, aspects from other planets, associations of other planets sitting in that house, and then also where's your dispositor, what kind of conjunctions are sitting there. There's a lot more things that will go into it, but this is kind of give you an idea. So in general, you may see kind of a rough relationship with your children, at least up to a certain point. At least your children are 28, 30 years of age. You may see that kind of an aggression. And then things may ease out afterwards, depending on your Mars. If your Mars is malefic, things may take a longer time to ease out. If your Mars is benefic, you may not even see that kind of aggression as much. Things may be more easier for you, or they may ease out after a certain age. Now let's talk about the 4 aspects of Mars. The first aspect of Mars is on your house number 8. What is house 8? House 8 is a house of transformation, as I mentioned. It is a house of sudden loss, sudden gain, house of research, house of occult, house of in-depth research, underground work. So those kind of things are seen from house number 8. It's also if you take food in from your mouth, this is how you take the food out. So that part of your body as well is seen from house number 8. And so if you may see some issues with house number 8 there, you may see some issues with your body parts there. Uterus also is represented by house number 8. You could see loss of job. So when you have the 4th aspect of Mars on the 8th house, you could see a loss of job. You could see a loss of a marriage. You could see the loss of any other kind of relationships, loss of pretty much any kind, because it's sudden loss, house of sudden loss. But that loss would perhaps transform you too, because Mars 8th house in Kalpurush Kundali is a house of transformation. So even though it's not a straight up 8th aspect, it's still the house of transformation at the end of the day. So whatever you have placed in there generally will help you transform your life around as well. Let's talk about the 7th aspect, which is going to be on your house 11. 11th house, what is that? That's a house of higher income, awards, recognition, success. It's your older siblings. It is also the house of your relatives. It's the house of your society, your network, your friends as you're growing up, your friends as you've grown up, etc. So those are the things you see from house 11. It's also your area of the legs below your knees all the way to your ankle. So when you have Mars sitting and aspecting the 7th house, it's what you give is what you get. So for example, your social circle, perhaps you have always had issues with your social circle. if you are not giving as good, you may be getting worse back multiple times. That's the Mars's aspect. As I mentioned, Jupiter's aspect, you give little, you get a lot back. With Mars, you give a little, you get a lot back negative, okay, for the seventh aspect. Perhaps you don't have older siblings. It's also an aspect on your older sibling. Perhaps your relationship is not that good with your older siblings. Perhaps your higher income is just not where it needs to be. You want your higher income to be at a certain level and you just can't get it there. It's just very, very, very hard for you. So that's kind of the aspect on the seventh house. Now, Mars's aspect on the 12th house here, that is going to be the eighth aspect. And as I mentioned, the eighth aspect is one of those where it will transform you. It's going to give you the most struggle of your life, but it's going to transform you. So in this particular case, house number 12 is represented by isolation, detachment, could be hospitals, jails. The reason we say hospital and jails is because it's isolation. When somebody goes to jail or a hospital, they're isolated. So it doesn't mean that this person is going to end up in jail. Just means they'll have isolation. They'll feel isolated in their life, like people are leaving them, jobs are leaving them, they are left alone. You know, that isolation feeling most of their life. They're going to feel like they have been left by people, by situations, by things in their life. So that's going to be one of their biggest struggles in their life, where they're going to want to try to not be alone. They are always going to want to connect with somebody, whereas the situations in life are going to leave them isolated, perhaps. That's kind of the 12th aspect. That's one part of it. This person, if not that, then they may face a lot of expenses. House number 12 is expenses and losses. So losses you can connect with the isolation, but I would say the expenses, they may always end up with some kind of expense, health expense, could be on education expense, could be just any kind of expense. You know, you will see that happening to this particular placement for Mars. So foreign settlement, which is settlement away from home. Maybe they've always wanted to just move away from home, but that's not happening either. That's been one of their struggles. Maybe this person lives in a certain country and they want to be in a different country, and they've been struggling most of their life to try to move to that country, and it's just not happening. So again, we got to look at the dispositors of both of these houses, 5th and 12th, and also the associations to make more stronger determinations. But you will see in general these kind of issues in your life. If you have Mars in your 5th house, I would love it if you would write it in the comments what you see your situation to be, if you can resonate with any of the things that I've mentioned. And we do provide personal horoscope consultations, so don't forget to click on the link in the video description and we can get back to you. And don't forget to hit subscribe and like and the bell icon so you don't miss out on any of the future videos. And thank you so much for watching.